Hey listeners, my name is Bella and I live in Sacramento. If you're enjoying Low Profile, please consider supporting the show by donating at patreon.com/lowprofile. Also, be sure to subscribe and give the show a good rating. The Morrison family will be forever grateful, and it will help Markley continue delivering these long-form interviews. And now, today's show.
Hey, it's the penultimate episode of Low Profile with Markley Morrison, Season 3. Today I'm speaking with Marcus Popp, whose musical project Oval has been on the cutting edge of electronic music since the early 1990s, creating some of the earliest examples of what would be known as glitch music. I called him at his home studio in Berlin to ask about his latest album Sizz on Chicago's Thrill Jockey Records, how he found his signature sound, his scoring of a German radio play called Nova, and his current venture as a sort of life coach for musicians and other creative types. We'll also discuss his collaborations with Gastro del Sol, Mouse on Mars' Jan St. Werner, a troupe of Brazilian musicians, and his work in progress slated for 2021. From Olympia, Washington, I'm Markley Morrison, and this is my conversation with Marcus Popp. Marcus Popp, thank you so much for joining me on Low Profile today.
Yeah, no problem.
So, where are you in the world right now?
I'm in Berlin. I'm in my so-called studio at my weirdly stingray-shaped IKEA desk from the 2005 Office line of office desks. And I'm looking at my computer screen as I do.
And the computer's your main instrument, is that fair to say?
Yeah, computer plus controllers of all sorts.
Now, you've been highly active and influential in the world of more unconventional electronic music for several decades now. And your latest release, Size, is that pronounced correctly? SCIS?
Oh, maybe Sizz.
Sizz?
Uh-huh. Yeah, like sister album.
Uh-huh. And then Exploio, the accompanying EP.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very forward sound for Oval or Oval. Should I be saying
Oval?
I've always wondered. I've heard both ways. So
yeah, me too.
What was different about making this latest album or couple of albums compared to your previous work?
Many things were different. Okay, I have to preface this with saying that Sizz, like the 2020 album, is in fact like the continuation, like the sister album, hence the name, of Pop. And Pop was this 2016 album that started as a, let's say, concept album, but not really in the way one might think. Like it was not meant to be like a pop record, or the Marcus Popp signature album or whatever, but it was about like reverse engineering the classic like 1990s Oval glitch sound aesthetic, but using contemporary tools, right? So this was the premise of Pop at the time. And 2 afternoons later, that had been accomplished. So then was the question, okay, so what can I do with this now? Like, is there any way to expand on this, and how? So I kind of decided something I had never tackled before, like beats, like beat making, like sequencing, like drum sounds, like drum samples, that kind of stuff.
Wow, and it still sounded like Oval, but it's very active and, percussive.
Yeah, like even enthusiastic and optimistic and grandiose and all these things. And that was completely on purpose. So it was supposed to be this like love letter to like music even, like this thing that is like just exploding with color and sound and melody and like this kaleidoscope of optimistic vibes, that kind of stuff.
A signature sound that has been sort of happening throughout the years was this CD skipping sound that was just sort of a signature in your music, and you would just physically manipulate CDs to randomly give you these sounds. Was there a certain album that was skipping that really caught your ear and inspired you?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't recall that happening. It happened to me a lot after the album was out. Like there was this like running gag of me entering like a cafe or a restaurant or some breakfast place, and then at the time there were these like CD-based sound systems, and the PA over the PA suddenly, as soon as I entered the room, the disc started skipping. And that happened actually like multiple times, but that was after the record was out. So basically it was really this thing of me like looking for like a different way of musical expression, if you will. It was really just it was not like anti-music, or it was a little bit of protest maybe. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit of like strategy. It was a little bit of novelty. It was a little bit of happy accidents. It was all of that, sort of. But at the same time, it was really just me looking for like a new way to do this, because I found what was happening around me at the time, which was like this, explosion of electronic music, like all these like pieces of formerly very expensive pieces of music equipment getting into the hands of almost any producer out there, and what people did with it was mostly like either like old school, like 70s, like electronics or soundtrack music, or on the other hand, techno, that was like the big techno explosion in the early 90s in Berlin, and even earlier in other places of the world. And so the idea was to kind of find like a way of asking what I thought at the time, and what I think still are today, like more relevant questions, not necessarily to continue like the same old music thing, which was basically a continuation of like rock and roll, like good old music business kind of thing. And I was actually at the time, I was kind of known for interview statements like the best thing about music is that it's still there, and I'm just organizing the remnants here, the digital remnants of music, period. Like I was, you have to picture at the time, there was this multimedia kind of revolution, and we were pretty sure that we would soon be like programmers, or digital content creators. So music didn't seem to have like a lot of future in it, at least for not much longer, So I was pretty skeptical of this entire music thing, basically. So I was not up to like going on a stage and like just placing whatever kind of synthesizer I could afford on a stage and then have like a 4 to the floor beat and then expect people to dance or to kind of look up to me and think that this is a great thing. I kind of was looking for like a different perspective, I would say, on this entire like electronic music thing.
And you mentioned there was like an element of protest to it. There's a listener, Ryan, who wanted to know if the political climate in Germany in the early 90s informed your art and your music in any way.
Yeah, sure. Like there's this, not exactly the climate, I would say, but there's definitely this sidebar of what I, at the time, used to call like awareness, in my music. And there was definitely something similar to like a political agenda, if you will, in the early days. Like I kind of tried to establish the notion that Oval was about more than just the music, sort of, it was more about like creativity and what we do with it, so, and it was more about like starting a discourse, like asking questions, and a typical answer by me in an interview at the time would be either next question or let's look at this in a different way, so It was really about like not playing according to the rules, but a political agenda in terms of like politics in the news or anything like that. It wasn't.
Sure. And what about the first LP that Oval released, Wanton? And at that point, Oval was listed as a trio, and you had singing on that record.
Yeah.
And someone I was dating a long time ago told me she was studying German, and she told me that the lyrics read kind of as just like technological jargon, and she said she was very confused by them. But I guess that was sort of in the formative years.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the recordings of that first album, they were even years older than the release date of that record. Like, when we recorded these, we were still in our like teenagers, like bedrooms in our parents' houses, That was like a different time and a much simpler time, It was really just more or less like a bunch of friends gathering around this prosumer level Yamaha sampler that I could like barely afford, and just trying to make some music happen somehow, and that was mostly what this was, like just these like people coming in and out with bringing instruments, ideas, all sorts of like collaborators, if you will, and then these two guys stuck around, and there was this trio, of the three of us doing these what ended up being songs, and then we did these songs, and then like years later we mastered or kind of remastered them and put them out.
Okay, and then so the progression between that and say System-ish was a pretty long time. There was a big interval there. So that accounts for the drastic change in style, I suppose. Because you released System Ish next, which was widely regarded as groundbreaking, followed by 94 Discount, which featured your acclaimed long-form piece, Do While.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who does the visual art on those 90s records?
Those were, some were the designs of Sebastian, who at the time worked at the German equivalent of an MIT, I would call it. And he had access to these like video synthesizers from the 70s, as well as like the, at the time, like cutting edge, latest, hottest, digital plugins and editing suites. And then these covers kind of came about, and the videos in particular. I think the 94 Discount cover is a different story, though. That was done externally by a graphic designer who was working with similar aesthetics, but it was, I believe it was more like an edit of the music video to Do While, and then processed, which of course at the time was like a big deal, but that might have been done like externally.
Yeah, I just think that those covers have such a like very intricate, very good visual representation of what the album might sound like. So after you put those records out, then we had your collaborations with Gaster del Sol and Microstoria.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering how the Gaster del Sol collaboration happened, first of all.
I have been like a huge fan of David Grubbs' work since the very early days, like since the even other like much more noisy rock-esque outfits that he had in like a few years prior to Gaster del Sol. So I literally followed his music also in the sense of like driving for 4, 5, 6 hours to see like all of his shows in Germany and so on. So there was some contact at some point. Mm-hmm. And I still remember him handing me over the source material to Camoufleur, and we were standing like super awkwardly on a median in the middle of like a very busy district of Berlin, like right in the middle of traffic.
Oh wow!
And we were like, and he was handing me these like CDRs, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, that's fantastic, because I had bought like a CD burner, which at the time was really expensive.
State of the art, having a CD burner back then.
That was kind of state of the art. It was barely affordable, and I was like really anxious of like burning like certain edits of these kinds of files to then again manipulate them with my like trademark kind of ways, and at some point it occurred to me like I should have brought a translator, and I was like should I have brought like a translator? And he was like no, this is fine. So yeah, that was kind of the story, and then I turned it into this big undertaking on my end, and I worked on these materials quite extensively, and I ended up with like basically like a full album, but it didn't really quite turn out that way. So I think my music is featured like on a few tracks.
Staircase mountain to skin to dampen, summing up for the defense.
Then the project kind of disbanded after that, I think.
Yeah.
You
That-
probably know better than I
That
do,
checks
yeah.
out. Yeah, we had David on not too long ago.
Yeah. So still very happy to have contributed to that. Now, Microstoria was by definition like a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Jan Werner, who is also in Mouse on Mars, very prolific in all sorts of ways, artist, recording all sorts of things in all sorts of formations and constellations. And at the time, we just ran into each other and we were like interested in what we were doing. And then we just decided to give this a try, I suppose. And then we came up with this, again, it was like this quirky, new, at the time, way of like ringing like the last bit of like new melody and harmony and rhythm out of these like very limited pieces of equipment we were using at the time.
Yeah?
Like I recall both of us like going over to this like pro music store, like a Guitar Center equivalent here in Berlin, which at the time was still around the corner of where I still live today. And we were at the counter and looking for this like sound expansion. It was like a Roland like first party like sound expansion for the synthesizer we were using to generate like some of these Microstoria kind of signature like sequences. They probably contained like a multi-sampled, like brass section or whatever, and then a piano, and then whatever else, and that was like a couple $100, and we were like, should we buy this? Like, can we buy this? Like, is this worth it? Like, how many sequences can we get out of this?
Right.
That's so quaint, looking back today.
Were you recording to tape back then?
Yes, the Oval stuff was recorded on a Fostex R8. That's like a reel-to-reel quarter-inch tape, I believe, and it was completely automatable. So that was quite sophisticated of a setup at the time.
And were you guys using any physical instruments for the Microstoria music? It sounds like there's guitar sometimes, or no? It was all synthesized.
No, it's all kind of simulated, emulated, and faked. I would say.
Wow.
But sort of successfully, I think.
would
Like the
say
entire vibe it gives off is this like, almost electroacoustic kind of vibe. And the tools we used were completely digital and pretty, like run-of-the-mill, obviously pro, equipment, but not exactly, like the studio gold standard type equipment.
Well, you certainly had me fooled, for one.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about Oval Process, which was an album that came out.
Yes.
But when that came out, all my friends were talking about how it was also a software that was going to be available to the general public, and that you could basically like an Oval simulator, where you could
Right.
pretend to be Marcus Pop and create your own Oval music.
Yeah.
And I never found a copy, but I heard that it was used for interactive installations.
Yes, exactly. This was the way of getting Oval Process into people's hands. It was the engine of these like interactive terminals that were set up at various locations, you know, like an art gallery or like some Sony corporate like exhibition space or some art museum even. You know, it traveled to the US, like Thrill Jockey were kind enough to ship the precious and as it turned out very fragile installation object over to Chicago, and there was this showcase in the Museum of Modern Art, I believe is the name of that museum. I felt better with this idea of like this album and the software like claiming a space in the real world as opposed to just be this downloadable thing you would just, you know, get from some site and then use it for like 10 minutes and then file it away and never look at it again, you know. So it was kind of similar to these like info terminals at an airport. Like there's 3 different designs, and one of them is really big and heavy. The other is kind of slimmer and kind of more easy, like easier to transport and to ship. And yeah, the look and feel was at the time kind of state of the art. So yeah, and there was a computer in there which was really well hidden and well shielded, and yeah, there was a sophisticated construction, and now they're in storage.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've done other installation pieces too. I saw an old clip of something with involving synchronized swimming.
Yeah. That was part of an art festival in Switzerland. And yeah, they just invited me to do this choreography with their synchronized swim team. And that was, an interesting experience. All sorts of new criteria, you know, entering the mix. All sorts of new distinctions to be made. All sorts of new ideas to be had on the spot, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but that just occasionally happens. I also did... I think with a similar art festival in Switzerland, I did a live music for these kinds of like formation, like for formation flying.
Cool. What about in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s? I know that Oval's sound started making its way into pop music, pop with 1 P.
Right.
And like, the first thing I noticed was when Björk sampled a song from System Ish, and I was pretty elated because I was a big fan of both and happy to see those worlds collide. And then Radiohead kind of started moving in that direction. What was your reaction to be influencing the pop world?
Honestly, I really didn't think about it. Like, it was like a different agenda from mine, quite obviously, and it was like a different world from mine, quite obviously. And when Björk called, like, my first spontaneous response was like, "Who gave you this number?" So that's, looking back today, that's so like delusional almost, But at the time I felt, sure, I mean, this is kind of the way it's going, but, this is going to be happening for a little while, and then something else is going to be happening in that world, quite obviously, by definition. And so I'm here doing my stuff, like in my own kind of way, and that was pretty much that, I guess. And that stuff really just happened.
Mm-hmm.
I
guess things just happen. Yeah.
It's kind of a pattern with me.
So after that, you released Oval Commerce.
Yeah.
And then you took a long hiatus, but Oval Commerce was just a really, I don't know, that album had like a lot of space on it and a lot of density as well. Some really, really beautiful melodies, just so many textures. Felt like a really grand piece. And
right.
I'm wondering if you went into that intending to go on a hiatus, or was that intended to be the last Oval record for a while, or did that just happen?
Oval Commerce was definitely the completion of the Oval Process project, and I also definitely maxed out the tools and kind of ideas and strategies that I had at the time. So my entire approach to music as Oval until then was about stepping back and not claiming authorship, at least not along the lines of the, like typical criteria of the music business. So here's the recording artist, and here is what inspires him or inspired him for his last album, and this is what he did on holiday, and all that kind of nonsense. But it was really just like, I'm maxing this out, and then everything will probably crash. Let's see how this is gonna go. And and I felt like the next time I would be coming back with something, it should be different. It should be not only musically different, but also like different, like running on a different engine, on a different mindset. It should be like a second debut album all over again, And of course, I did not want to kind of keep dancing around like authorship and music any longer, in the sense of like, okay, this is not really me. I'm really just organizing the files here. I'm really just organizing the digital remnants here. This is not music. This is music plus or something like that. But instead, I wanted with the next thing deal with music for real. Like beyond the old like dissection or beyond the old like denial even. And I wanted to be like part of a dialogue with music. Like also learn the language of music, like learn a skill set, like something that I can just play, that kind of stuff. And of course, that was also like a through line, was like to bring out the music part more in electronic music, that kind of stuff. And so, because as a listener, like I was never really listening to electronic music. So if I went to see like a live concert it was always this like band, you know, it was always this like indie band, metalcore band, whatever, you know, that kind of stuff. Like I was never into electronic music as a listener. I mean, I knew it existed. I mean, it was really just like, yeah, sure, this is how they do, you know, and that was pretty much that. So the album was not only to reorganize sounds any longer, but to like get in charge, you know, like play stuff and take control and do this like natural living, breathing music thing that just is, you know, this music just is. On the surface, it's almost like a post-rock, like trio or something, with a guy doing electronics. So, it was supposed to be this like self-explanatory thing, you know, like something without a conceptual overhead, you know, like no meta, like this is really just like drums and even guitar, you know, or something that sounds eerily like a guitar, you know, stuff like that. And yeah, basically, I guess ultimately I wanted to, I wanted to be able to tell my story from both sides, you know, like from outside the music container, because that was where I was as Oval, and now I'm inside the music container. And that's what I do now, so now I just play. And that's what I did. But it took a while, you know, like took a while to do that.
Had you been a musician, like say a drummer, guitarist, all along?
No, not at all.
No,
never. I've never, no. It really just sounds like that, you know, and to put it together in a way that it sounds like just played, that took these years.
Well, what about in between, when the next thing you did after Oval Process, you worked with a singer-songwriter?
Exactly, yes.
Nothing like that had ever come out from you. Where did you find Eriko Toyoda?
Eriko just walked up to me after like a artist talk / like discussion panel in Tokyo, and just handed me this like demo, like literally tape, I believe at the time, and just said like, listen to this if you have time. Thanks for listening. I'm Eriko, and that was
that.
Yeah, and the material was interesting. And then she mentioned like, I'm like ready to move to Europe. Like I could be establishing myself in Europe, and I was like, so check out Berlin. Like this could work for you, you know. And then we ended up working on this album, and it's basically like these like micro songs. At the time, I threw everything at it, what I could command and afford, and the album turned out to be this, kind of songwriting plus, I guess, you know. So it sounds still like songs, but it's a lot more. I mean, that would be an album to return to at some point, I think. Especially like regarding what I'm doing now and what I have done in the meantime, especially with like drums and now beats, because this is kind of missing from that record. I feel like I, myself included, and many other people couldn't really like place it anywhere because there was just not enough of like a rhythmical like backbone. I feel like this was just floating, and it was like this floaty like structure, open structure kind of songwriting, but the sound itself was not very floaty. It was pretty like harsh and digital and dry. And yeah, so like to have beats or some kind of rhythm in there would be pretty interesting. And I'm still in touch with her. I mean, she still lives in Berlin. We just communicated, and yeah, I will look into these files. I will have like a big file transfer and kind of look into like my old like legacy hard drives over the next couple of weekends, and then there might be some stuff coming up. I mean, there's definitely like lots of like material that's still untouched or unreleased or unfinished, and the So album, yeah, that was also like a lot more material and so on.
And you've repurposed other music as well, like the Voa record.
Oh yeah, Voa, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a few tracks on there from the O record, sort of repurposed with lyrics added.
Yeah. So that was a project by the German Culture Institute, like the Goethe Institute, and yeah, they call like every few years, and they have like a project. Hopefully, it will stay that way, you know. Like, but yes, in the past they have called every few years, and they had something. And at that time, it was like, hey, do you want to go to like South America and work with these like musicians? And there was even like a casting or some kind of audition with like lots and lots of people sending in their stuff, and I picked like 7 musicians, and then we met in the studio in Brazil and worked there for like I believe like 2 weeks, and we recorded like 2 albums worth of stuff. And each one of these songwriters is not only very different but also very talented in all sorts of ways, and they just play. And so that was a very interesting, not only like regarding like collaboration and workflow and organization, all that kind of stuff, but also musically, obviously, was this thing that just like clashed, and it was a great time. But the music was this thing that was so full of like it was merging into this like new thing.
Estrela rara, carro corre pro mundo parado, sujo, poído, bolado, bola de gude. Menino pula, joga, solta pipa no vento, no céu azul ou cinzento, no mar fechado ou sem fim. E no meu quintal eu tenho tudo. Ando por todas
And yeah, that was. I'm very happy with the results. Like each of these musicians brought all sorts of things to the table, and different things. Like it was like an opera singer, like more guitar singer songwriter type of musicians, and then vocalists who had like a huge range, and all sorts of like percussion / guitar musics thrown in there, and that's what we ended up with. And it actually is 2 albums. It's Kaleidostopia and Voa, and they're both on my Bandcamp.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that was a 2-album affair. All out of the 2 weeks in Brazil?
Yeah. I was running a tight ship there. Like they were like when there was a day off, I was even in the hotel room, you know, working on stuff. And they're just fast, you know, like step into the vocal booth and just record everything in like 2 takes. And there's even a music video of the same name. It's Voa, which is kind of confusing because it's basically a video that merges like these 2 album tracks into one, and it features this amazing singer Dandara from Brazil. And the video is also, I believe, I'm looking at it right now, very interesting. Like these two like character actresses going through these like strange vignettes of symbolic, non-symbolic, kind of interesting kind of interactions. Like I still love that video.
Todo mundo dançando na batida que vier.
So, I didn't know this about you, but while I was kind of doing some research and catching up, I came across these videos offering your services as sort of a consultant or like a guru to the artists.
Ally, motivator, remixer, devil's advocate, collaborator, beta tester, critic, idea person, inquisitor, stabilizer, destabilizer, decision maker, veteran, wild card, cheerleader, strategist, mentor, copy editor, communicator, therapist, image coach, project closer.
And you've done like workshops. You're currently doing one-on-one consultation sessions. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I booked one. So I wanted to get the experience.
Yeah, great. Fantastic.
But can you tell me, tell the listener what exactly that is and how you got into that?
Yeah, like I'm doing this for like a couple of years now. Like I just turned it into this thing with like a website, which is poppop.com, like my last name 3 times and then .com. And over the decades almost, I was always invited for the occasional, workshop and lecture, class, artist talk here and there, and then over the years, I think what happened was that I saw that my kind of like natural, like outsider perspective can actually fully pass as a outside perspective, like mirroring back the artist's like proposition at them, and now fast forward to like 2020, like a few years later, I'm working with artists on their projects in all sorts of roles. I mean, these collaborations can take all sorts of forms, they're in between very high concept and very meta, to very practical and very hands-on. So it's like, it's all sorts of stuff. What I'm teaching, I'm all about the specificity of like what's uniquely different about each artist and creator, and to get that out of the artist, that is like a thrill ride. This is like, and it's definitely also bordering on the like, psychological territory, which I'm of course not qualified to have any business in, to have spend any time in.
Sure.
But still, it's part of that, it still plays into that, and it's a lot of fun. So that's why I'm currently just yesterday started to offer these like free lockdown sessions, and I had like a first round that started in April, and I had like altogether like close to 100 interviews with artists from all over the world, and that's amazing.
Wow.
So now I just started the second wave, and let's see what's going to happen with that.
I'm looking forward to talking to you myself. That sounds great.
Absolutely, very much looking forward to that.
So Marcus, can you tell me anything about your current work in progress? You've been posting some audio clips online. It sounds very different, which I think we can expect from you. But what is different about it for you?
What's different about it, first of all, is that the base for this is a radio play, like a radio drama that I did and that was aired in the summer. And I just recently did like a multi-channel like version for 51 speakers, like a 3D version of it at the ZKM in Karlsruhe. That's also an equivalent of MIT / Media Art Museum. And musically, yeah, it's romantic. It's very E minor. Not that I would know what this means. I just Googled it. But people told me it's E minor. And then I had to Google what this is. And yeah, I'm going to turn this E minor into something. Let's see.
I've just got a couple listener questions for you, if that's okay.
Okay. Cool.
One of them is, Katie wants to know, who would you like to collaborate with, dead or alive, if you had the chance? This is a surprise, so sorry.
Yeah, Americans are so much more prepared for these kinds of questions, I suppose. Yeah, like a metalcore drummer that like has the exact kind of economy going on in his like breakdowns that I love. You know, that kind of like immediacy and that kind of at the same time like command of the entire breakdown in the sense of like control, in the sense of impact, you know, and there's just a few that really hit the mark for me, and that would be fascinating to work with someone like that in the studio. Actually, I have approached a drummer of such a band back in 2011, but he probably didn't really see what this collaboration could be about, you know. I wonder if he would see this differently today, like 10 years later, you know.
Sure.
But yeah, that's still a thing. I just realized that now. Like I was thinking about that. Like I was trying to make that happen like 10 years ago already, you know. So maybe that it doesn't even count.
Oh, that's
let's
cool.
leave it at that.
You know, I never would have imagined from listening to your music that you were a metal fan or metalcore or any of that.
Yeah, you know, I'm more into these like not necessarily emo and not necessarily poppy, you know, like more the metalcore that sounds like the typical band that would win these kinds of music competitions in like say like Sweden. You know, like sometimes there's these music competitions online
just
or whatever, and there's
really
these
technical and
not necessarily, but like emotional and like a little like exaggerated, let's say.
Sure.
You know, there's always two singers, like the growly singer and the like harmonic singer, the melodic singer, that kind of stuff. You know, that's what I love. Yeah.
Excellent. And so now this is another one that I didn't prepare you for, but it's an easy one.
Okay.
If I was going to buy you a hamburger, how would you like it?
First of all, vegetarian.
Okay.
And the actual like composition I would leave up to you, because this would show me a lot about you. You know, I would learn a lot about you, like much more than I would learn about myself in this situation, you know, because I never think that's something I'm never thinking about, you know. So I would have a look at the menu, or I would let you put it together for me. How about that?
Okay. Well, for you, I would say deli mustard, Swiss cheese, arugula, and sautéed mushrooms.
Yeah.
On a plant-based patty.
Why not?
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. Would there be any calorie information provided?
Hypothetically, I suppose that the restaurant has that information in the back if you ask for it. We'll say
Yeah.
that. So they can.
And then they roll their eyes and then
Right, and they come back 10 minutes later, and you
with
ask
this
them again.
like this stained kind of finder. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. I think that's it, no?
I think so. We did it. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks again to Marcus Pop and to you for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to read more about this or other episodes, check out lowprofilepodcast.com. That site is being updated and there's a lot more stuff on it these days. We're also doing giveaways from time to time on Instagram at lowpropodcast, so follow us there if you want to see some little videos and maybe win some music. I've got one more episode for you this season, so if you haven't, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast to stay connected. Until next time, this is Markley Morrison wishing you the very best.
Low profile with Markley Morrison.